majority of them were sadly dug up from the bottom of the barrel. And I really want to appreciate, Mr. Speaker, the Finance Committee, through the leadership of Ali Roba, for...
Senator Joe Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I must admit that I've learned a lot of English from Senator Asige. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statement by Senator Miraj Abdullahi on replacement of lost academic certificates by NEC, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say that Senator Miraj could not have brought a better statement and at a better time like this, Mr. Speaker, because like those that have spoken before me have said, Mr. Speaker, NEC has all the data of every other candidate that ever sat a NEC exam, Mr. Speaker. And so it should not be a big deal replacing a lost certificate. In any case, if there were problems with making these replacements, Mr. Speaker, they should just make a new certificate and stamp it replacement. It should not be a tedious process, Mr. Speaker, because all the information is there, and as Senator Aledama has said, they should be able to digitize the processes at NEC, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other thing that caught my eye was the need to travel to Nairobi to verify registration details with the Registrar of Persons. Mr. Speaker, the Registrar of Persons is an office that has branches in all counties and all sub-counties, Mr. Speaker.
To fight poverty and suffering are the certificates. And when the system or the process of replacing the certificates becomes so tedious, then it makes their lives a nightmare. Mr. Speaker, I would propose that this is done seamlessly, and the ministry and the NEC should have a system that makes replacement of lost certificates seamless, and that will make Kenyans enjoy the hard fruits of education. Mr. Speaker, if possible, I would suggest replacement of these certificates to be free, because most of the instances, as I have already mentioned, what makes people lose their certificates are accidents. And people may not prepare for accidents. As they say, Mr. Speaker, in Kiswahili, anjali haina kinga. So it would be easier and make life easier for Kenyans if replacing lost academic certificates is done freely and in the shortest time possible, so that Kenyans can get back to their lives. If they are seeking jobs, they will seek jobs. If it is applying for any qualification, that they will have their papers. Mr. Speaker, I would say many people suffer when they lose their academic certificates, because I have seen in the past, Mr. Speaker, even when politicians or people are looking for jobs, then they are forced to look for their classmates and declare if they really went to school, who were their classmates, in which institution did they go to, which secondary school or university. Mr. Speaker, as one of us said that to digitalize this process would be the way to go. Then if this happens, we will not...
Senator Chute.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to add my voice on the petition by Senator Miraj Abdullahi. Honorable Speaker, we have a problem in this country, especially at the coastal region. There are historical land injustices. Honorable Speaker, there are absentee landlords who have tortured residents, who have built houses on those parcels of land. Honorable Speaker, former coastal rulers who are referred to as tenant.
Senator Chute.
Yes.
Acquaint yourself with the amended standing orders, more particularly on the petitions. We amended our standing orders to immediately the petition is committed, no comments should ensue, and that senators will have an opportunity to comment on the report as tabled by the committee that is looking into that petition. And therefore, you may proceed to take your remaining 1.5 minutes, but on another issue, not the petition.
Honorable Speaker,
proceed that way, then I'll rule you out.
Let me request my 3 minutes starting from now, Honorable Speaker, because I'm getting into a new subject now. Honorable Speaker, let me now divert to the statement by Senator Maletilian. Yes, Senator Hezena. Honorable Speaker, we went to, some time back, we went to Rwanda, Kigali, and I got a taxi, and that taxi wouldn't start to move because I didn't put on my belt. He told me I have to put my belt on, otherwise he will be fined and he will be jailed for 2 days. So I obliged. Honorable Speaker, let me be given 3 minutes.
Give him an extra 1.5 minutes. Proceed.
So, Honorable Speaker, why am I saying this? It is the rule of law. That country, if you go to Rwanda, the city is very clean. The hotels are very clean. And if you ask anybody in Rwanda, are you a Tutsi or a Hutu, he will tell you, no, I'm a Rwandan. Honorable Speaker. And if you look at the election they held, it's credible. Somebody who was there from Marsabit told me he went there and people are voting almost 100% for that president. And the reason being is the issue of tribalism and clanism was completely eliminated. Honorable Speaker, I also want to thank the observers who went from Kenya to observe the election in Rwanda. Honorable Speaker, I wish and hope this country would look at what the president in Rwanda, President Kagame, is doing. And I want to congratulate him and thank him for the development which is in Rwanda today. Honorable Speaker, I think we need to have our politicians travel to Rwanda frequently and see what is happening in that country. Honorable Speaker, after, you remember, they had 1994 issues, clashes in Rwanda. So many people died. But if you go to that country today, you won't know there was that problem in 1994. The problem we are facing today in this country, Honorable Speaker, I think we need to learn from President Kagame. Look at corruption. If you look at the statistics, corruption in Rwanda is almost zero. Ethiopia is about maybe 10%.
Senator Oroba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the request for statement by Senator Miraj on the issue of the NEC certificates. Mr. Speaker, actually, I had a lot of points on digitization of these certificates. So let me not belabor that point, but I'd like to say that in the interest of not only those who have lost the certificates, Mr. Speaker, but in the interest of making sure that we don't have people who are submitting fake documents or creating documents from downtown, Mr. Speaker, I think the process of digitization will actually cure the issue of authenticity and making sure that people are able to be tracked in terms of what they have studied, where they have studied, and even who their classmates are, because it should be public, a public portal, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to add on that when we were digitizing our title deeds, if you ask for a report, and maybe I hope the Committee on Lands can ask for a report on how many data entry people were employed during digitization of the title deeds, Mr. Speaker. This is also a source of employment. This is actually an intentional source of employment for young people, because if we have to make sure that we are digitizing all the existing NEC certificates, and that does not mean just KCPE and KCSE, Mr. Speaker. We have diplomas in NEC. We even have certain courses that are in NEC. Mr. Speaker, that can offer literally, I think, 2 years worth of jobs for our youth, just in terms of digitization of this process, Mr. Speaker. At the era where we have QR codes and one-time passwords and things like that, I don't even understand why you need an actual physical certificate, Mr. Speaker. This kind of thinking was when, you know, we were in the analog spaces. I think we should move with time, and I want to urge our Cabinet Secretary nominee, hopefully he is approved, to actually make sure that when they are doing the budgeting, they should focus on putting a budget on digitization of all certificates from the Kenya National Examination Council. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now the 30 minutes meant for this session is done. We'll move to the next order. Next order, Clerk.
Order number 8, the Creative Economy Support Bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2024, first reading. A bill for an act of Parliament to establish mechanisms for the support for the persons of creative industry, to enhance the contribution of creative industry to the economy, to establish the Creative Fund, and for connected purposes. Order number 9. Order number 9, the Livestock Protection and Sustainability Bill, Senate Bills number 32 of 2024, first reading.
I rise and beg to move order number 13, that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominee on behalf of the county governments to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission laid on the table of this House on Tuesday, 23rd July 2024, and further, pursuant to Article number 232B, Roman 7 of the Constitution and Section 7.2 of the Salaries and Remuneration Act, recommends MS Linet Washiali Muganda and Mr. Mohammed Aden Abdi to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning for transmission to His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, PhD, for consideration for appointment to the position of Member of Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Mr. Speaker, sir. Following the conclusion of the interview process, my committee retreated on the 22nd of July 2024 to consider interview results of and prepare the report. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with CRC Act, the committee is required to propose names of 2 persons so qualified who are of the opposite gender for consideration. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the committee, having considered the results, resolved to recommend Lynette Washiali Muganda, a female of ID number 883748, and Mohammed Eden Abdi, a male of ID number 27512996, for consideration for nomination to the position of Member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission under Article 232B Roman 7 and Section 7.2 of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act. Mr. Speaker, Lynette Washiali Muganda holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Economics and Business Studies. She also holds a Master's of Business Administration, both awarded by the University of Kenyatta. Ms. Muganda has a wide experience in human resource management, having served as Deputy Director, Human Capital in Kenya Wildlife for 8 years, Human Resource and Administrative Officer in the Federation of Kenya Employers for 3 years, and Senior Human Resource Consultant at Delo and Dosh for 3 years. Mr. Speaker, she is currently a council member of Dedan Kimathi University, whereas Mr. Mohammed Abdi holds a Bachelor's of Business Management degree, Human Resource Management from Moi University, and additionally holds a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Nairobi, and he is a current member of Human Resource Management Professionals Examination Board. He has a wide experience in human resource management and administration, having worked at Silicon Telmec Limited as HR Administration Officer, and he is currently working at Right Ways Consulting Limited as a director, where he has served, Mr. Speaker, for the last 9 years. The committee, Mr. Speaker, is grateful to all Kenyans who expressed their interest in the position of nominee to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, and for their cooperation during the entire selection process. The committee appreciates various agencies and public institutions which provided information requested for concerning different interviewees. The committee is also grateful to officers of the Speaker of the Senate and the Clerk of the Senate for the support we enjoyed while discharging our duties. I therefore want to request members of this House to stand behind this committee, recommend these two people for onward transmission through the Minister to His Excellency the President. Mr. Speaker, having gone through this exercise on behalf of this House and Parliament, I couldn't help, Mr. Speaker, comparing it to a similar process going on in our other House. Mr. Speaker, it concerns me that we were able to make this decision without belaboring the issue of how much a candidate was worth. I have reflected on it, Mr. Speaker, and I think asking for how much a candidate is worth, Mr. Speaker, is a waste of time. It is a waste of time unless the interviewee, Mr. Speaker, is going to be pinned down to justify that wealth. He is going to be pinned down to submit tax returns, Mr. Speaker, is going to be pinned down to how he applies that wealth. It is a waste of time, Mr. Speaker, if there is no threshold that you are speaking to. For all that Kenyans care, it looks like for you to become a minister, you must be a millionaire. Who said? I even saw, Mr. Speaker, one of the interviews struggling to look like she's rich by saying that, you know, I have this much, and my husband also has this much, and therefore, because we have brought it together, now we have this many millions, we are therefore rich enough to be... Who told people that the ministers of Kenya must be rich people? Who told them? This waste of time of asking for how much people have without following it up with intelligent interrogation is a waste of time. It must be dropped. I therefore want to commend my committee members for making this good decision. I can see I'm being asked to read the motion. I'd already read it at the beginning. But Daniel, why are you insisting? I'm an old dog.
Senator Boni.
I know the ropes. Yes?
Senator Boni, whom
Yes.
are you addressing?
I am addressing the clerks at the desk.
You know you don't do that.
Oh, through you, Mr. Speaker.
No, you're not doing it through me. You went straight to them, and that's wrong. You're out of order.
Mr. Speaker, sir, through you, I've been requested...
Can you move the motion?
Yes.
Remember, last time you did not move this motion. You came up with a preliminary issue, which I ruled on.
Yes.
Now that you're proceeding with the motion, you need to move
yes.
that motion. Once you're done, you get your seconder to second, and then we propose the question and allow your colleagues to make interventions where necessary.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it's just that there was so much consultation at the beginning. I started by moving the motion, and I said that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance. Yes, I moved it on Finance and Budget Committee of the Senate on the Senate nominees on behalf of the county governments to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, laid on the table of the Senate on the 23rd of July 2024, 3 Tuesdays ago, and further pursuant to Article 232B, Roman 7 of the Constitution and Section 7(2) of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act, recommends Ms. Lynette Washali Muganda and Mr. Mohamed Aden Abdi to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning for transmission to His Excellency the President for consideration for appointment to the position of member of the
that they could actually go in and try and streamline, Mr. Speaker. Because of those shortcomings, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission was set in place to make sure that all public servants are able to channel their views in terms of benefits, in terms of salaries, and in terms of the working environment. So that we can have a system, and hence the direction that the Finance Committee has taken, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, I've had a lot of comments of members of this House actually trying to say that unlike other processes that are ongoing in the National Assembly, you know, this process was better than others. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the members in this House to understand that in order for us to strengthen our institutions, we have to be able as a House and as members of this House, responsible members of this House, to also understand the process, Madam Speaker. For those who are making comments that the Finance Committee has done way better than what is happening in the National Assembly, Madam Speaker, I don't even think a report has been tabled in terms of the vetting of the cabinet secretaries, Madam Speaker. So let us also be fair and let us also guide Kenyans as leaders who are responsible to understand the processes that are within both the National Assembly and the Senate, before we can stand and make sensational comments just so that we can be popular out there. Madam Speaker, a report is yet to be tabled in terms of the vetting of the cabinet secretaries. The same way this report of the Finance Committee, we have waited as leaders in this House. We have waited for the process to take place. We have waited for the report to be tabled. And having read the report as a responsible leader, then I am commenting and seconding on that report. Madam Speaker, I want to urge the senators in this House, we are better and we are the upper house, and we should be able to understand the process and respect these institutions if we are going to trust these institutions, and if we can accord the same to the members of the National Assembly and particularly to the committee that is actually dealing with the vetting of the cabinet secretaries, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to say that the Finance Committee of this House has actually done an impeccable job. And if you look at the applicants of all the members who wanted to be seconded to become commissioners at the SRC through the Senate, it was a huge pool of candidates, Madam Speaker. And the Finance Committee took their time, vetted all the applicants, and were able to even score them, Madam Speaker. Of the two nominees that are being presented in this House, the lady, Lynette Washali, if I am not wrong, scored 74% as a mean score. And we have Mohammed Aden, who scored 70.29%, Madam Speaker. So perhaps what I would like to speak through is the transparency of this process within the Finance Committee. And maybe in the interest of positive criticism, maybe what we can add on in the National Assembly in terms of the vetting of the cabinet secretaries is to have a more transparent process. Maybe we can even see some of the scores that they are giving the cabinet nominees, so that we can be able to say that indeed this person either performed poorly or did not perform at all, as we have seen with the nominees of this Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, I also want to speak to the fact that as we are sending these two nominees to represent and ensure that we protect the interests of the counties in the SRC Commission, Madam Speaker, I think it's important that a lot of sensitization is done in terms of what is the mandate of this commission. People associate the SRC Commission with benefits, and particularly benefits of legislators or members of parliament, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is imperative that perhaps in their working operating procedures, because they have committees within SRC that work on different mandates, Madam Speaker. I think Kenyans should also understand that it's the same SRC that has a structured system to send a representative to deal with the issue of the wage bill, Madam Speaker, to also deal with the issue of the legal and the policy frameworks, as well as the job evaluation and the salary structures that we have. Not only within the National Assembly and the Senate, but also in public service and all other sectors, down to the devolved institutions that we have, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to commend the members of the Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, as the mover of the bill has stated that there are many unnecessary bureaucratic processes that we perhaps put in when we are vetting either commissioners or members of the public service, Madam Speaker. And this is an area that, as much as we are making fun of, we really need to look into, Madam Speaker. During the vetting of one of the cabinet nominees in the National Assembly, I had some complaints coming from the committee talking about how our recruitment of our KDF soldiers is still backdated, such that they are still asking for physical measures of certain body parts and things like that. Madam Speaker, I think that is the point that Senator Boni Halwale was trying to say, that in the interest of improving the efficiency, in the interest of improving our work as public servants, as leaders who are there to make sure that there is transparency and checks and balances, maybe we need to question ourselves as to why we are asking for certain information if that information is not necessarily being used for the interests of the public, Madam Speaker. Like Senator Halwale said, when you ask someone about their wealth, what was their intended purpose? I believe the intended purpose, when that particular question was structured, was first of all to declare, so that we can be able to, as those who are watching you, to check if you are stealing any monies from the public coffers, but also so that we can check that even as you are creating all this wealth, because we have seen many cabinet nominees increasing their wealth over 100 million, Madam Speaker, in a year. Personally, I can tell you my wealth has gone down within this year. So when we are putting those measures, we should also be able to sensitize the public that perhaps we are asking, because we also want to go to their KRA portals to see how much of that percentage was remitted as taxes, Madam Speaker. I think if we do not have proper structures of checks and balances, then we end up being a house of talking and just creating nonsensical bureaucratic measures that are not needed in terms of vetting, Madam Speaker. I would want to add my voice on that and say that perhaps also the Finance Committee that has done a good job, maybe when it comes to issues of vetting and deciding which nominee they are going to put in a commission, why didn't we have that televised, Madam Speaker? Why didn't we have that so that we could follow, so that we could have listened to our nominees, Lynette and Mohammed, would have been able to understand how the committee actually decided on these two people. So maybe a lesson for the Finance Committee is, as much as you're criticizing the National Assembly, a point to take is that more transparency, and I believe we have the measures, we have the systems, in Bunge Towers, we can be able to televise some of these things that are happening in the committee, because I was also a bit curious as to how the other members performed with regards to these final ones who were shortlisted. Madam Speaker, with those remarks, I want to encourage, Madam Speaker, I want to encourage Kenyans who are out there. We have a lot of these kind of opportunities that seem to be passing even the young Kenyans because they are not aware, Madam Speaker. And maybe a lesson to the Finance Committee is how to put out that information that we are looking for a commissioner to be able to go and protect the interests of the counties, to be able to sit in SRC. If that information can be put out publicly and maybe sent to our young generation like the Gen Zs, so that they can also get an opportunity, even if they don't make it to the final list, but an opportunity to participate in the process, Madam Speaker. If you look at the age of the nominees, you will see that both are senior citizens. And I say this in jest because we need to get to a point where we are having more youth participating and being able to come to the table where the decisions are being made. Madam Speaker, in the interest of time, I want to conclude, but before I conclude, I want to say that since we have seen, and I don't know whether this will be taken as a recommendation, but since we have seen that the systems of Senate, that the committees of Senate are actually very effective and efficient, Madam Speaker, perhaps this is an opportune time to have a conversation as to why the Senate is not involved in vetting cabinet secretaries or all other nominees that are sent to the National Assembly. And if it is because it is pegged on a standing order or the Constitution, Madam Speaker, that is why we are here as legislators. I believe that this House can add good input in terms of vetting. As you can see, the Finance Committee has proven again and again that we are good at this and our processes are transparent. And I believe that some of us also, Madam Speaker, would be able to pose certain questions. Madam Speaker, you know, on Sunday I was listening to the nominee, Cabinet Secretary nominee of gender, Madam Speaker, and I asked myself, maybe it was an issue of lack of preparedness. Maybe it was an issue of mismatch in terms of what she was told to prepare for and what they were asking. I don't know what the issue was, but Madam Speaker, had we been sitting there as representatives of the Senate, we would be able to demystify why our cabinets engage in how maybe we can better our processes by referencing the current ongoings in the National Assembly. Madam Speaker, if I am out of order, I withdraw.
Senator Gloria, maybe what I would guide you is that since the process is ongoing and we would not want to put the cart before the horse, I believe the report is not yet done. The determination is still pending before the House, and comments on the floor of this House could as well give an impact on the mind of the interviewing panel. So the best is to leave that issue out in your debate until it's determined by National Assembly, when then it becomes open for us to also debate upon it. So please be guided accordingly, and for the time being you can withdraw it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I definitely do hope that the comments I have made will impact the committee. However, I withdraw.
We do not want those comments. Just to clarify, these comments should not be the ones that are guiding that committee. That house is independent and should objectively make its own finding and verdict. They are competent men, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members who are superintending over that matter. So they have the capacity to determine, to prepare a report, give us the report, upon which we will be able then to debate on it. So
thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand guided. I wish to conclude by saying that we need to be responsible enough to make our processes efficient, Madam Speaker. My point was that as senators who are watching the vetting, Madam Speaker, there are a lot of glaring questions in terms of the processes, and perhaps what I was trying to shed some light on is that maybe a few notes could be taken from the Finance Committee, and maybe, Madam Speaker, the conversation that I'm trying to forcefully introduce to this House is how does the Senate at one point interact with that process or is able to give input, Madam Speaker. However, having said that, I want to conclude by saying that I proudly second this motion and support this report, and I do hope that once we have the two nominees approved and they start their work, Madam Speaker, they will remember that as Senate we are there to protect the interests of the county, and Madam Speaker, that they should also remember that their nomination should guide and help protect the interests of the county as commissioners within the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. I submit. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominees on behalf of the county governments to the position of the member of Salaries and Remuneration Commission laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 23rd July 2024, and further pursuant to Article 232B7 of the Constitution and Section 7.2 of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act, recommends Ms. Lynette Washiali Muganda and Mr. Muhammad Aden Abdi to the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Planning for transmission to His Excellency the President for consideration for appointment to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Honorable Senators, the motion is open for debate, and I will ask Senator Cherari K. Samson Kiprotich to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From the onset, I want to laud the Committee of Finance and Budget. I know it's one of the busiest committees.
And before you proceed, I think it's important I guide the House that the law requires nomination of a recommendation of two candidates, a man and a woman, and the President will appoint one of them. Thank you. May proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that guidance. I was to indicate, but it is important you did. Madam Speaker, I want to support and say the Finance and Budget Committee has done a tremendous job, a good job for this. I think this report is well done, well captured, Madam Speaker. I think apart from the Senate County Public Accounts Committee, the second busiest committee is Finance and Budget, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have seen credentials and the role of SRC, Madam Speaker. Let me say the following. Of course, under Article 230, the role of SRC cannot be gainsaid. It is very critical because now the decision of review of civil servants' salaries, which we are being told today, Madam Speaker, out of the revenue we collect as a country. Madam Speaker, 1.1 trillion goes to public servants in this republic. Therefore, the role SRC plays is very critical, Madam Speaker. And I've seen SRC has not been taking lightly the comments we make about their work. I have even suggested in the past that SRC should be a part-time commission because their work is not 8 to 5, Madam Speaker. Their work is to review periodically the salaries and remuneration and personal emoluments of public servants and state officers across this country, as was envisaged in Article 230. In fact, we should be looking at possibility of reducing the number of SRC commissioners in this republic, Madam Speaker, so that we are also, because if we are spending 1.1 trillion on salaries, personal emoluments for state officers, Madam Speaker, for civil servants, it is unfair because these civil servants, majority of Kenyans are not employed by government, Madam Speaker. And therefore, even as we approve or as we transmit this motion, Madam Speaker, for the Minister of Treasury, of course, as we wait for the report of the National Assembly on the vetting exercise, of course, the CS nominee of Treasury, John Badingongo, should, if they get opportunity, to ensure that these people we approve give value to the offices that we are talking about. And therefore, in fact, SRC, Madam Speaker, has not been helpful in advice. By the way, if the reading, Madam Speaker, you are a very senior lawyer in this republic, Madam Speaker, and Secretary General Emeritus, who ensured that you midwife the current government, Madam Speaker. It cannot be gainsaid. The work of SRC is to advise. I don't know where they got these powers. They have arrogated themselves powers to set the salary. It's not their business, Madam Speaker. And we have said, Madam Speaker, they have never assisted us. Look, for example, at UHC, Universal Health Coverage in terms. We spend hours here. They told us they will work with the Council of Governors to confirm under permanent and pensionable terms of UHC in terms, Madam Speaker. Who served this country as true heroes when we have a COVID of 2020? They didn't assist. We have had push and pull over the issue of members of county assembly, the MCS, Madam Speaker, their personal emoluments, their welfare, Madam Speaker, but they have done nothing to ensure, Madam Speaker. And you know, under the labor laws, the law does not allow anybody to have their salary cut. It is never practiced anywhere in the world, Madam Speaker. We have told them, Madam Speaker, can you advise the country on the issue of welfare of members of county assembly, Madam Speaker? We have insisted, we have said through the AMCA, Madam Speaker. SRC has been no show. We have sat with a CAF, Madam Speaker. We have even, you remember, the intern doctors that demonstrated for the longest time possible. SRC could not advise the country, Madam. It is their domain to give a practical, implementable with the current, Madam. You saw the embarrassment that they wanted to put members of, and I suspect SRC SRC was part of the people who are inciting Gen Z in this republic. Because when there were protests in these countries, SRC went and issued a circular of increasing salaries of members of parliament and other state officers. If we had not rejected, Madam Speaker, tungesalamiwa with these Gen Zs. They have embarrassed us. It means they are not having their work cut out. They don't follow what they should be doing as SRC, Madam Speaker. It was embarrassing. They embarrassed the presidency. They embarrassed the state officers, members of parliament. When the country is going through hard economic times, Madam Speaker, why would you want to increase the salary? And it embarrasses us, Madam. We in fact, I propose that through your office and through the head of public service, SRC must give us unreservedly apology to the country of the Kenya and state officers for putting us into embarrassment and setting us against coalition course with the great people of Kenya, Madam Speaker. We have Kenyans who are earning less, Madam Speaker. Why don't you look officers and county commander and county security team are sitting while young people, criminals hired by the governor, are walking around with the djembe sticks, harassing young men and women, pregnant mothers, the disabled in Kapsabet town in a clear, broad daylight, Madam Speaker. And yet we are struggling here. As we talk today, the ECD teachers of Nandi County are supposed to go on strike because they have not been paid. But when you hire hooligans, the county has money to hire, but they can't buy drugs. They can't pay ECD teachers very well, Madam Speaker. The roads are impassable in Nandi as we talk, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, as a house, and I'll be bringing a comprehensive statement to have the Inspector General of Police. We are doing what we call in quotes bad manners in this country, Madam Speaker. Because if you are allowing criminals to walk around with djembe sticks, with crude weapons, in a big town like Kapsabet, Madam Speaker, what are you selling the rest of the country, Madam Speaker? I will be challenging, Madam Speaker, and therefore we must agree that even as we approve, we pass anything, Madam Speaker, in this house, we must ensure, Madam Speaker, we speak truth to the power. And governors should understand that they don't exist, they don't have powers that they can overrun the police, Madam Speaker, that they can overrun the security apparatus. Unless you are telling the country you no longer trust, Madam Speaker, under Article 37, the right to picket and demonstrate. You saw there were national protests. I didn't hear the president directing or taking people to street to counter demonstrate. In fact, the president said, let people demonstrate and be given security as per Article 37 and 38. Unless Kapsabet town, Madam Speaker, is in another country. But if it is in the country that is Kenya, just like Kilifi, just like Mombasa, just like our neighbors in Kakamega, just like in Omabay, just like in Tana River, Madam Speaker, then there is a big problem, Madam Speaker. We should be called out, and I want to challenge the Inspector General of Police acting, even as he comes for vetting. We must see action as at now to ensure that we protect the right of Kenyans. Why would you somebody have a problem? The other day, Madam Speaker, we normally have demonstrators here at the gate. You as the Speaker has never ordered anybody to be clobbered or being harassed for coming to Parliament to present their petition, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the SRC under Article 230, even in vetting. Madam Speaker, I was surprised because I saw members of National Assembly and it is unanswered. If somebody challenged me, I can produce. When the message was of vetting of Inspector General of Police, I was embarrassed that some members of National Assembly, and it is in the interest of my minority leader, Madam Speaker, Senator Retired Justice Madzai, that some members of National Assembly said Senate does not have a role in vetting of Inspector General of Police. Which constitution are they reading? Which law? Security is a shared function, Madam Speaker. The security is a shared function, just like a disaster preparedness emergency. I was wondering, Madam Speaker, and I always get shocked. Which country are we in when members of National Assembly contest the vetting? Madam Speaker, if members of National Assembly embarrass themselves with what they did, they should not use that Senate to redeem themselves. They should redeem themselves. Why were they bash and attack Senate? They attacked us on conflict of interest bill. It is unanswered. They didn't want Senate to be part of the Inspector General of Police vetting. It is the Constitution. The law is very clear under Article 93. Parliament is the Senate and the National Assembly. Security is a shared function. You cannot say, and that is why we fought in this parliament, and I know people who have stayed longer like Senator Manzai and Senator Kalwale will tell you, we wanted even governors to sit in county security committee. Because if a problem occurs today, you will need that governor to be part of security restored within that county or within that constituency, madam. We fought for long. So it was embarrassing. Even senior house leaders, like my majority whip, Sylvanus Osoro, I thought they should not bear, Madam Speaker, and the answer can bear me witness. And that is why, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, when I saw even vetting of CSS, I know the report is being written, Madam Speaker, but we can make general observations because it was an open process, Madam Speaker. You find the process of vetting of cabinet nominees, Madam Speaker. Even the chair was talking more than the nominees and making just comments, Madam Speaker, and making funny comments. How do you tell a nominee don't bring your bedroom matters before this committee? Is that even a valid question to ask? Instead of asking how many taxes you are paid for this country, what is your ability, what is your competence? Madam Speaker, I'm impressed by a number of nominees. One person who impressed me is former Governor of Mombasa, Ali Hassan Joe. Despite getting a D-, he is having 2 masters and is going for PhD. Which inspiration would you want? That inspiration is the best. It means in life you must work hard. So from that vetting, at least the young people who do not perform well, people who went to Kumbaru, Madam Speaker. I know Senator Kalwala has not been having kind words towards me, but the inspiration of Governor Ali Hassan Joho, the nominee of mining and blue economy, Madam Speaker, even shocked the country with the grasp of Queen's language, with that clear thought process, Madam Speaker. I think that was the observation, Madam Speaker. Another nominee that impressed me was the former MP of Garissa Town, Aden Duale, Madam Speaker. I was happy with his honesty. He said he doesn't receive phone calls because members of parliament are corrupt. Anyway, the chair did not decide to correct, so it is unanswered. Minister Duale was an honest man. He said he does not receive our phone calls as members of parliament because we are corrupt, Madam Speaker. But no one corrected. It is unanswered. We can print it and bring it here, Madam Speaker. So we need honest. Even Madam Speaker, Eric Muredi, that was having is what 32 million. I want to agree and challenge the GNC that Eric Muredi, Madam Speaker, if approved, will be is only 32 million worth. He doesn't have a car. He's a young man with a vision. That should encourage, Madam Speaker, how we perform as a country. We should believe in the people that we have, Madam Speaker. So even as we did vetting, and I'm proposing this, Madam Speaker, going into the future, can you direct when our committees does vetting, like finance and budget? I have noticed in our committee rooms, Madam Speaker, there is no video recording. It is only answered. I wish and I request, and I wish the commissioners or the commissioner is here, at least every committee room should have a video recording so that we have the answer and video recording, so that some of us, Madam Speaker, some of these videos that are being vetted, Madam Speaker, can have opportunity to be able to go through, Madam Speaker. So the exercise that has been carried, we hope when the report will be tabled, I think, Madam Speaker, going into the future, let us ensure the track record, the capacity and ability, Madam Speaker, goes into the future, Madam Speaker. So we believe the vetting that was being done, and I want to request, Madam Speaker, I don't know how your office will look. I want to request the way we saw vetting in National Assembly with cabinet nominees. I don't know, we should have structured questions to be used in vetting, like the way the Finance and Budget Committees, Senator Kalwale is here, should tell us what would happen, Madam Speaker. Because the questions that were being asked, Madam Speaker, some are embarrassing, some were supposed to juxtapose, Madam Speaker. Let us ensure, even as we wait for the report, and I hope we'll get the report from the National Assembly when they table it on Wednesday or Thursday, Madam Speaker, that report, we should get it and ensure that it comes to place. Of course, Madam Speaker, I would have comments on nominee of sports, because that is transferring incompetence from roads to sports, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, going into the future, we must agree under Article 230 on SRC that let us approve.
Senator Cherargei, I had given a direction regarding commenting on a process which has not been completed by the other house. I gave that direction to Senator Gloria, and it should have clearly informed your debate. It seems not to have been informed by that, and I now guide you not to touch that process until it's determined,
yes,
and a report done by the other house. Because the integrity of that house is equally protected as the integrity. The process they are doing is equally protected, just like the process is being done by this house. So please withdraw that.
Madam Speaker, there is what we call fair comment in a fair administration process, and I'm just making a general comment. I have not mentioned anybody's name, unless you know that person. Have I? I have not.
The nominee is clearly known, Senator Cherargei.
Madam Speaker, I think the standing orders.
Every member would take judicial notice of who the nominee in respect of the Ministry of Sport is. So it is safest to do what Senator Gloria did, leave that process until it bakes. To respond to it, and since they are not, and the report is not yet out, if the report was out and a verdict has already been rendered by the panel on the other house, then it will be easy to debate and it will be easy to accept as a public record once the report is out. So I still guide that since they cannot defend themselves, we allow the National Assembly to complete the process while we await the report. We will still have a chance to debate that report. I believe that. Thank you. You can finish, Senator Cherargei.
Madam Speaker, I want to wish well the two candidates. I know the law says President will appoint one, and the committee, of course, we hope to see those SRC members before this committee, Madam Speaker, but to support and ask the House to support and ask the SRC, if one of them, because there are two, if either of them succeed, Madam Speaker, they should assist the country in advising on the issue of ballooning, Madam Speaker, not only national wage but also county wage. The only county that is below, Madam Speaker, because I have advantages that is below 35% is Turkana County. The rest are beyond 35 as per the regulations on wage bill. We need also to work with County Public Service Board to bring that to an end. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, and in suggesting remarks, I therefore support the report, Madam Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kajwang Moses Otieno.
Madam Speaker, I rise to contribute to this motion. Whenever we give a task to committees of the House, it is our belief that they prosecute and execute in the best interest of the House, in the best interest of the nation, and in accordance with the Constitution of Kenya. Madam Speaker, I have requested for disclosure on the CVs of the applicants that the committee considered, because in the report the committee has mentioned that there were very many applicants. There were 48 applicants, and then there was a short list of about 10, and then about 15, and then 2 persons were picked from that list. And Madam Speaker, I take note that when I look at the short list, we have 2 ladies who topped the list. And that's quite impressive to find that 2 female applicants were considered to be the best. Now, the law requires that the House nominates a man and a woman. And as a result, Madam Speaker, I can see from this report that there is a female applicant who came from Mombasa County, who was number 2, and that is Mohammed Nahida Athman, who got 71.29% score, higher than Mohammed Aden Abdi, the male whom the lot has fallen on, who got 70.29. Mr. Speaker, when you are debating this kind of motion, it's important that the clerks give us the full information, the full picture, because I would be very, very interested in seeing the CV of Lynette Washiali Muganda from Kakamega, the CV of Mohammed Nahida Athman, and the CV of Mohammed Aden Abdi. Madam Speaker, the Senate has got a role in constitutional commissions. Now, this is part of it, and this is a very, very important role that we play. How I wish that our colleagues knew how important this role is and how hard we have fought for the Senate to be involved in appointments and financing of independent commissions. The approval of the Inspector General of Police is another solemn duty that this House must undertake, because the Constitution requires Parliament collectively to make that decision. The Commission on Revenue Allocation is another constitutional commission where our input is required. The Parliamentary Service Commission is another constitutional commission where the Senate is involved. Madam Speaker, our role is not only limited to vetting and making proposals. Our role, as per the Constitution, extends to funding. And when it comes to funding, Article 249(3) of the Constitution says, and Madam Speaker, I like reading this out because sometimes people wonder why the Senate wants to be involved in the affairs or in the financial matters of independent commissions. Article 249(3) says,
what is your point of order, Senator Gloria?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to bring to your attention under the Standing Order 246, under the standing order on broadcasting as well, Madam Speaker, there has been a recurring incident every time I speak in this. Not every time, but at least 3 times when I've been speaking, Madam Speaker. It is an intentional sabotage that when I'm at the floor, somehow, for a very peculiar reason, the online stream is tampered with, Madam Speaker. And I am speaking this confidently because I've actually walked out to find out, Madam Speaker. When I was seconding this motion, which is a very important motion, Madam Speaker, you can go and confirm and ascertain that they actually went offline. And they are claiming that there is some technicalities and issue, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if you look at our standing order, and if I can just direct you to the standing order 245-2 and number 3, when it says, when broadcasting the proceedings of the Senate on television, the following guidelines shall apply. The camera shall focus on the senator recognized by the chair until the senator has finished speaking, Madam Speaker. I want to raise to the attention of the Speaker and to this House that whatever monkey business is happening, Madam Speaker, must come to an end.
Senator Gloria.
Because
Gloria, what standing order are you?
245. 245, Madam Speaker, talks of broadcasts of Senate proceedings.
Yes.
And if you could go further to page 238 where it fleshes out, under 3 on television broadcasting, Madam Speaker.
230.
The page is 238. The standing order is 245, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this issue was even raised before by, I think, Senator Eddie Okech, in terms of the quality and the provisions and all that. Madam Speaker, what I want to raise is that I've realized when I am making my submissions, Madam Speaker, there is somebody there behind trying to make sure that Kenyans don't hear what I am saying, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I protest. And this is against our standing orders and against my privileges and my rights as a senator, Madam Speaker. I call for an investigation, and whoever is found culpable must be taken to that same powers and privileges committee that they want to send all senators every time, Madam Speaker. It is a shame that people who should be assisting in actually ensuring that Kenyans get everything that is happening in this House are actually being used by cartels of this House to sabotage my message.
Senator Gloria Uroba, you cannot reference to cartels without substantiating whether there are cartels in the House. So you'll be required to substantiate that. And then, Senator Gloria, if you have a point of order. Senator Enoch Wambua, you have a point of order?
Yes, please, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, due respect, Senator Gloria stood on a point of order when Senator Kajwang was contributing. And I've been asking myself, what was out of order with what Senator Kajwang was presenting, and the connection between what he was presenting on and what she has spoken about. Madam Speaker, this is also a house of record. And we also have to draw a line between issues that are administrative and issues that are for debate on the floor. Speaker, I say this as a leader in this House, and really, there is wisdom in what I'm saying. If we are to deal with administrative issues on the floor...
Senator Gloria, can you allow the senator to be heard in silence? You got your chance. Allow him, I said allow him to finish what is...
So, Speaker, if we are to deal with administrative issues on the floor, then what will happen is that every time we have an issue with the Secretariat,
then we bring it on the floor. We will not look good. This is our hours of record. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I will hear Senator Joyce, and then I'm going to give a direction.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Senator Gloria. Wait for your chance.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would want to really echo the sentiments of Honorable Wambua, as far as I'm in agreement with Honorable Gloria, I would also want to humbly request Honorable Gloria to do a formal
this house, Madam Speaker, and may I even dare say, Madam Speaker, that if they keep singling out the complaints that I bring to this floor as an issue about Gloria, Madam Speaker, first they came for the Jews, then they came for who? There'll be nobody left in this house, Madam Speaker. So we must address this very important issue.
Thank you. Senator Gloria, your point is heard, and let me now give a direction on it. You have raised an issue on broadcasting, and if I recall very well, this issue was still raised last week, and broadcasting is important. However, as a chair right now, I may not be able to know what has happened with regard to the broadcasting, and the only way the House get to know what has transpired as you were seconding the motion would be for the clerk's dispatch desk to ensure that we have a report on whether the broadcasting was happening, the transmission was happening, or whether it was not happening. As at last week, the House had technical challenges, genuine technical challenges on transmission of the broadcast, and what I would guide Senator Gloria to also consider is the fact that as at last week it had nothing to do with Gloria or any specific senator. It was an equipment challenge, and I believe the Secretariat is able to give a report and a guide as to whether we still have the delayed transmission. And also, when we are raising such an issue, Senator Gloria, you raise it as an issue that is affecting the House. You don't have to always personalize it. It has nothing to do with you. This technical transmission was also an issue that was raised last week by several senators, if I may recall, whether it's last week or the other week, but it's an issue that the Secretariat desk has been working on. So give a report whether transmission was done, and it can be reported in the next session. And I think that should be the guide that will help us in that issue. Senator Kajwang, you can resume the debate.
Madam Speaker, I hope you'll allow me to recover the lost time because it was not related
to the motion. Yes, your time was paused. You will not lose your minutes.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, let me go back to this because this is an extremely important undertaking that this Senate is called upon to do on behalf of county governments and on behalf of the nation. Madam Speaker, when you bring this motion for delegations and for senators to approve or reject, you must provide the full information and full disclosure. As I had said earlier, that there were 48 applicants who were narrowed down to 15, and the committee has given us the names of 2 applicants for consideration and for approval. Madam Speaker, I cannot make a decision in the absence of the details of the qualifications of those other applicants who have been shortlisted. In this list, Madam Speaker, I see Mr. Silas Otieno Owiti from Mutembei, who scored 59.71%. At least give me a glimpse onto his CV. At least give me a glimpse, give me the notes so that I can see from the minutes how the performance was. And Madam Speaker, when it came to the appointment of Dr. Amoth, which is a motion before the House, I am seeing annexures and minutes and all the details of considerations of the committee. But when it comes to the discussion of these two nominees to the SRC, I have even requested in the official WhatsApp group for the annexure that carries the CVs, the annexure that carries the conversations that led to this decision. Madam Speaker, we must be careful because I've been through this exercise. I do recall about 6 years ago when this House was called upon to make a similar decision. There were even accusations of favor. There were even accusations of tribalism. There were even accusations that the committees were operating with an end in mind. And Madam Speaker, at that time, some of the applicants were former senators. They were former colleagues. It was very sad when some of them, a former senator who has been in this House for 5 years, was being disqualified for lack of experience. If you have been a senator for 5 years, or a member of National Assembly for 5 years, what other experience do you need to get a job in this country? What other experience do you need to undertake a role in a constitutional commission? And Madam Speaker, I want to be convinced that such considerations were not made in this case. And it will be important that before we take the vote, that we get the full disclosure of the minutes and the conversations and the resolutions and any dissenting opinion, if there was a dissenting opinion of members of that committee, Madam Speaker, because as I look at the adoption schedule, it has been approved by 5 out of 9. I would like to hear what the other 4 had to say with respect to the final decision that has been brought to this House. Madam Speaker, I am not imputing any improper motive. I am just asking for full information so that I can make a decision on the motion that is before us.
What is the point of order? Your point of information.
Sorry.
Would you like to be informed by Senator Boni Halwale?
Madam Speaker, out of respect, I would wish to listen to Senator Boni Halwale.
Senator Halwale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the concerns by the Senator of Mutembei are right and justified. It is true that what you are looking for is both on the handset recording of the proceedings of the committee, but it's also true that it is part of the report which has not been brought here. What you have here is the executive summary of the report. We could not have done all that we did for all the candidates. Number 2, Madam Speaker, the issue he has raised about the fear that there could have been tribalism and stuff like that, it will help. We had a marking scheme. The nearest way the committee approached the issue of how to handle the great tribes of Kenya was the constitutional requirement of regional balancing as to how much one was getting for academic endowment. If you had a bachelor's degree, you scored less than master's degree, and so on up to PhD. I beg to inform.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank Senator Halwale. Indeed, as a member of this committee, if there is important information that has not been brought before this House, then this motion should be stood down. I am looking at a similar report of a nomination for Dr. Amoth, Madam Speaker. And I'm looking at the iPad here. There is an annexure that is 200 244 pages. 244 pages. It has minutes. It has details. Why is this different? And it is a similar process where we are being called upon to exercise our constitutional and statutory duty to make approvals or appointments to constitutional commissions. This committee then, this motion should be deferred, and this conversation should stop at this moment until the committee brings us a full report, Madam Speaker. The report we have is 28 pages. 28 pages. How do we know that justice was served? If it was not the respect that I had for Senator Khalwale, how would this House have been informed of that criteria? Madam Speaker, as I've said, I've gone through this process. And this particular process, we came to some conclusions. It was established that a committee had dismissed a former senator on the basis of lack of experience. And I've kept asking that once you have been elected as a senator or nominated as a senator, you have sat in this House approving budgets, approving appointments, writing laws, you have sponsored laws. How can a committee then come and tell you that you do not have requisite experience to become a member of a commission? And that's why we're insisting we need to see those annexures to see whether those kind of arguments found their way in the decision of this committee. Madam Speaker, I will leave it to the leadership of the House and to your wisdom to decide whether we are proceeding with adequate information and whether you're doing the right things. But let me make certain broad comments, Madam Speaker, as that point is still under consideration. That our role does not end with appointment. Our role extends to funding for constitutional commissions. And Madam Speaker, we have been weak and we have allowed that function or that role to go to the National Assembly when Parliament or when the Constitution clearly states that that is the role of Parliament. I want to read Article 249(3), which says that Parliament, and not National Assembly and not Senate, that Parliament shall allocate adequate funds to enable each commission and independent office to perform its functions, and the budget of each commission and independent office shall be a separate vote. End of quote. Madam Speaker, the word there is Parliament, and it is not National Assembly. We have a responsibility, we have a duty to be engaged in the budgeting and resource allocation. When the committee makes reference to Standing Order 76 and 77, this interview should have been done in line with the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, the same instrument that the National Assembly has been using to vet the cabinet secretaries. And Madam Speaker, the reason why I say so is that the Public Appointments and Parliamentary Approval Act provides great detail on how this exercise should be conducted. Madam Speaker, that act says that Parliament shall focus on academic credentials, professional training, experience, personal integrity, and background of those who are being proposed to take up constitutional and statutory appointments. Being a member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission is a constitutional appointment. And so, Madam Speaker, how I wish the committee would have made reference to the Act of Parliament that is currently in existence rather than to Standing Order 76 and 77. That Act, if it would be properly implemented, and not with the kind of mischief that we have seen in past vetting for cabinet secretaries. Madam Speaker, there's a question that has always come up, the question of net worth. And I can tell you that many a times when you are vetting nominees to the cabinet, Kenyans do not remember what they said they're going to do. Because there is one thing for them to aspire to do something, but there's also the established government policies. I have seen some cabinet secretaries say how they're going to be publicly spirited and how they're going to do things differently. But let's remember that there are already budgets that have been established. There's already a president who is in office. And so if you come with views that are at variance with those of government, the existing budgets, existing plans, and the personal views of the president, then you are just going to get frustrated. But the question of net worth is one that has animated the nation. I saw a computation of the net worth of the nominees that are currently before the House, without getting to the substance of the matter, to be 10 billion. And Kenyans are offended. Kenyans are offended. What is this magic that politicians play that makes them wealth that serious corporate organizations cannot make? Madam Speaker, before I got into politics, I was in the financial services sector. You will find an insurance company collects revenue of 4 billion Kenya shillings. And at the end of the day, it makes a profit of 50 million. A technical profit. That is once the premiums have been collected and the claims have been paid. And that is an institution that perhaps has employed 200 people. That has got branches throughout the country. That is integrated. That is creating a lot of opportunities and contributions to the GDP of this country. That is paying taxes. At the end of the day, they'll probably make 50 million as an underwriting profit. What is this thing that members of Parliament do that generates them the kind of profits that even insurance companies cannot generate? And it is becoming an insult to the people of this country. The majority who cannot afford, the majority hustlers, we are building for them 2 million houses, 3 million houses, and then we are proclaiming that we are billionaires. How will a billionaire understand the needs and aspirations of that person whose biggest wealth is a 2 million house? Madam Speaker, if we were faithful to this process, even these applicants who are here, we should see an annexure showing how much they are paid in taxes. If I'm worth 300 million Kenya shillings, Madam Speaker, the taxes I pay must be different from the taxes paid by somebody else who's worth 31 million Kenya shillings. By someone else who just relies on a salary and has got nothing of value because their liabilities exceed their assets. Madam Speaker, another question that must be asked is a question of conflict of interest. In the substantive act that I've referred to, there is a question on conflict of interest. If my family is doing business, perhaps in the ICT sector, and then I get into government as a minister for ICT, I must disclose and I must lay out before Parliament how I'm going to prevent potential conflict of interest. In fact, in serious jurisdictions, once you get into certain constitutional and statutory positions, you put your assets or your wealth in a trust so that you are no longer directly involved. And so you are not compromised when it comes to procurement and provision of opportunities. We never ask those questions. Another question that we are required to ask under the Public Appointments Act is, have you ever been charged in a court of law? Madam Speaker, you don't hear those questions being asked. Another question you are supposed to be asked is, have you ever been advancedly mentioned in any report before Parliament? And Madam Speaker, all the 47 county governors have been adversely mentioned in reports before this House. And if we are taking seriously the reports of Parliament, which we must take seriously because we are Parliament, we must ask ourselves, During your tenure as governor for Tana River, did the Auditor General ever raise queries? And did the Public Accounts Committee bring a report to the House? And did the House adopt a report that recommended your investigation and prosecution? You find a lot of people in public offices. There are reports we have adopted here, but when we are vetting them, we never ask those questions. And that is why, Madam Speaker, I must insist that this process should not be done in accordance with Standing Order 76 and 77. This process should be done in accordance with the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act. Let me finalize by saying that if we are going to see the annexures and satisfy ourselves that Madam Lynette Washiali Muganda and Mr. Mohamed Aden Abdi indeed were the best of the best, I will have no problem supporting this motion. But I will still need to be convinced to see the annexures, the CVs, the resumes, the minutes, and the proceedings of those meetings. Madam Speaker, the nominees, once they get to office, let them remember that they are there to represent the interests of county governments. They are not there to represent the interests of the executive. And that is why it is the Senate that has been called upon to nominate them. There are two nominees. There is one from the Parliamentary Service Commission, which is part of Parliament, but there is a specific nominee of the Senate to represent county governments. Let them remember they are representing county governments and not their stomachs and not the national executive. Let them focus on how they can help county governments to reduce their wage bill to go below 35%, because right now the general rate is 40% plus. Let them focus on building synergies with the county public service boards, county assembly service board, public service commission, so that we can have a better way of managing human resources in counties. Madam Speaker, the national government has given out a system called IPPD. IPPD, Integrated Personnel Payroll Management System. It only deals with the payroll aspect. Payroll is not HR management. Issues of recruitment, issues of appraisal, issues of promotion, issues of leave management, all those are not being managed in any system. And so we encourage these nominees to build those kind of synergies.
You have 1 minute to finish that sentence.
To build those synergies and to involve the Institute of Human Resource Management. The greatest resource that we have in county governments is a human resource. Let these two nominees go there knowing that they are going to look at the interests of county governments and not the interests of the presidency or of a broad-based government. Madam Speaker, my decision on support will be dependent upon the annexures.
Honorable Senators, we have that report which Senator Kajwang has indicated he does not have sufficient information, and thankfully Senator Halwale has offered some of the information, but ideally there is a formal way of bringing that information to the floor of the House so that all senators have an opportunity. But I want to hear a few senators what their take is on the status of that report so that we make a verdict or give a direction on how we proceed with the report being used as a basis for debate. So I'll ask a comment from Senator Danson Mungatana, who was next, followed by Senator Mwinyi Haji Mohamed Faki. So they are commenting on whether the sufficiency of the report, so that I give a direction.
I'm guided, Madam Speaker, and I assume that my time will still be there for debate.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am of a different view, Madam Speaker, and maybe this is not a popular view, but Madam Speaker, if you are at the very beginning of this afternoon session, the Honorable Senator Boni Khalwale I'm personally persuaded that the leadership which is there and the information they have given us, I have no reason to impugn unless there is other information that I don't have. But from where I stand, Madam Speaker, my humble opinion is that we proceed with this debate and conclude. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mwenye Haji Mohamed Faki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm a member of this Committee of Finance and Budget of the Senate, and I did participate in the whole process that resulted in this report. Madam Chair, first of all, Senator Shakila and I dissented on this report and recommendations. And even this morning I did ask in the committee, I did make a comment that we had a dissenting opinion. Why is that dissenting opinion not captured in the report? Understanding order number 2 to 3, I think 5, says that a dissenting report, a dissenting opinion has to be captured in the report. A report having been appointed by a majority of senators, a minority or dissenting report may be appended to the report by any member or members of the committee. Madam Speaker, this has not been complied with. And as Senator Kajwanga said, the report is sketchy and doesn't show the true import of what transpired during the interviews. Chair, Mr. Speaker, now, it will not be prudent for us to continue the debate if those issues have not been considered. Thank you.
Senator Thangwa, it can't really be a point of order. There is no one on the floor unless it's a comment. All right, then you may comment on it.
Mr. Speaker, what you are witnessing now on the floor of this House today is one of the reason why people are in the streets in this Republic of Kenya, because information is scanty, Mr. Speaker. We are not able to have information when vetting is going on. If you ask this country, you will only be told the vetting that was going on within this period was that of the CSs. The people probably did not have information. There was a vetting of these commissioners to represent the county government at SRC. But, Mr. Speaker, it is very sad for a member of this House to request for a postponement of a report that has been tabled, yet this vetting were open to the public, were open to the members of this House, and anybody who wanted to find out the nitty-gritties could have attended these sittings, Mr. Speaker.
because I am commenting on this. It is not a point of order. Just the way you have commented, I'm commenting on it. We are commenting so that we assist the Speaker to make a decision. And I would request, Mr. Speaker, to be heard in silence. We listen to the two gentlemen in silence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my issue is that once a report has been tabled in office, on the table of the Senate, every member should be given an opportunity to discuss. If you reject, you reject it. If you support it, you support it. But the issue of stepping down a report that has been put on the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, it will go against our standing orders, Mr. Speaker. If you did not have the report, you had enough time to request for that report. And they're there, the public documents, Mr. Speaker. But it is my prayer, Mr. Speaker, that this report we continue debating, because we have so many people who will be having an opportunity to debate it. And I trust the committee, Mr. Speaker, that was mandated to do this kind of vetting. It is one of the committees that has been praised in this House, that has been doing their work diligently, Mr. Speaker. So I would go against those who are saying that we should start down the report. But I would urge you, Mr. Speaker, to rule that we continue the debate so that these people
right,
who have been nominated can have a chance to serve the people of this country.
Resume your seat, Senator Thangwa. You've been heard. Members, remember when Senator Thangwa indicated that he was rising on a point of order, I told him it was not. And unfortunately, Senator Mungatana had been asked to step down for an intervention that had come in. If that is exactly what had transpired prior to this intervention by Senator Thangwa. And so, honorable members, I am directing that even as we raise concerns about the content of this report and as to whether or not we will stand it down or we will defy it tomorrow, I will allow 2 more members to comment on it so that the chair issues a ruling as to the concerns that had been raised. I will give you members time to comment, but I need to just give directions that if we will ultimately have to make a decision as to how to treat this report, there isn't need for us to spend the entire of the afternoon when we saying the report is scanty and we need additional documents on the basis of the objections that Senator Kajwang had raised. And so what I'll do, honorable members, as I said, I'll give direction so that we are able to proceed in an orderly manner and deal with the report appropriately. So I will, I'm giving directions, and I want to give an opportunity to unlock this stalemate, particularly on the issue that had been raised to Senator Dr. Boni Halwale, so that out of it, he is the mover of that particular motion. Honorable members, Senator Olekina, Boni Halwale is not contributing. He has already spoken to the motion. I wanted us to unlock the stalemate so that we take directions appropriately. Allow Senator Boni so that we progress in a civilized manner, honorable members.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to associate myself with the sentiments and concerns by colleagues senators that they want the full report. There's no way you can debate a decision of a committee of parliament without proper information being availed to you as a senator or a member of parliament. So Senator Kajwang is right. Mr. Speaker, I also want to associate myself with the remarks by the Senator of Mombasa, Senator Faki. He's a member of this committee just like myself. He's right when he tells the House that there were 2 members who dissented, Senator Faki and Senator Sakila. It's a fact. The other 2 members, Mr. Speaker, whose vote is not recorded, did not attend the process at all. So the people who signed adopted the report, and the 2 who dissented were only 2. And when the matter was raised before the committee, Mr. Speaker, the member was reminded that they failed upon dissenting to request for the dissenting view to be part of the record. And usually, as you know, according to procedure, Senator Kajwang, Senator Olentema, Senator Wambua, dissent is normally signed. So let it rest there. And now let me come to the substantive issue by Kajwang, which concerns me.
Senator Boni.
Mr. Speaker,
Senator Boni.
The report which I have.
Senator Boni.
Yes.
Just listen to the chair. Do you confirm that the report that your committee tabled and the one you tabled before the House is a complete report? I want to ask that question. Answer me.
I want
yes
to confirm. I want to confirm.
Proceed. Just directly do that confirmation.
Which is what I wanted to say substantively. The report of the committee is here. It is complete. It has got the documents of the candidates. It has got annexures of everything.
of Criminal Investigations, Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, and the Credit Reference Bureau. Further, the clerks of the Houses of Parliament wrote to the ODPP by the provisions of the Constitution, the Public Appointment Act, Cap 7F, the Leadership and Integrity Act, that's Cap 185C, the Public Officer Ethics Act, Cap 185B, the Public Service Commission Act, Cap 185, the Health Act, Cap 241, and the National Assembly Standing Orders and the Senate Standing Orders. Mr. Speaker, sir, following the committee's analysis of the submissions and representations received on the suitability of the candidate for appointment to the position of Director General for Health, the committees observed that Dr. Patrick Omwanda Amoth, EBS, demonstrated the requisite knowledge and experience to perform the functions of the Director General for Health. He further met all statutory and constitutional requirements for appointment to the office of the Director General for Health. And the committees further observe that the issues raised in the 3 memoranda were sufficiently addressed by the candidate during the approval hearing. However, informed by the concerns raised in the submissions received, the Ministry of Health ought to undertake adequate, purposive and meaningful public participation and stakeholder engagement as provided for in Article 10 and 232 of the Constitution to ensure that there is balanced and adequate representation and input of the divergent views of all stakeholders in the health sector in the development of policies and guidelines. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committees, having considered the suitability, competence, experience and integrity of Dr. Patrick Omwanda Amoth, EBS, following the approval process and taking into account its observations and findings, and pursuant to the provisions of the Constitution, the Public Appointments Act, the Health Act, the National Assembly Standing Orders and the Senate Standing Orders, recommend that Parliament approves the nomination of Dr. Patrick Omwanda Amoth, EBS, for appointment as the Director General for Health under Section 16 of the Health Act, that's Cap 241. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committees also wish to thank the Office of the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Office of the Speaker of the Senate, and the clerks of both houses and their staff for their logistical support accorded to them during the approval hearing. In addition, the committees thank the candidate for his cooperation during the approval hearing. The committees also are grateful to the members of the public who submitted their memoranda and the media for their live coverage of the proceedings, thus enhancing accountability and transparency of the approval process. Further, the committees appreciate the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority, the Chief Executive Officer, the Higher Education Loans Board, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, and the Registrar of Political Parties for providing references and background checks relating to the suitability of the candidate. Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you and wish to request the Nyamira Senator and Commissioner, Senator Okongo Mogeni, to second.
Senator Okongo Mogeni, Senior Counsel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to second the nomination of Dr. Patrick Omwanda Amoth to be appointed Director General for Health. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of the Committee of Health of the Senate. I was privileged, Mr. Speaker, to sit in a joint sitting with members of National Assembly that undertook this very, very important process. And Mr. Speaker, we must applaud the 2010 Constitution that has made the accountability card for those who want to serve in the public to be very high. The Speaker, we must thank those who sent memoranda to the committee. I specifically want to acknowledge and thank Dr. Wahome, Mr. Speaker, who brought more than, I believe, 500-page memorandum raising an objection on the suitability of Dr. Patrick Amoth. Mr. Speaker, even though the committee did not agree with the issues that were raised by Dr. Wahome, it demonstrated to the public that Parliament undertakes a process that is fair, a process that is open to the public, a process that affords Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, an opportunity to raise any objection they have on the suitability of a candidate, provided, Mr. Speaker, the memorandum and the reasons raised, Mr. Speaker, can demonstrate that such a candidate is not suitable. On this particular instance, Mr. Speaker, though Dr. Wahome's objection did not carry the day, Mr. Speaker, he got a hearing. I remember us hearing him for more than 1.5 hours, Mr. Speaker, as he took us through what he thought was some omissions by Dr. Amoth when he served in this position in an acting capacity during the time when this country was going through COVID. So I want to encourage the likes of Dr. Wahome that even though, Mr. Speaker, his reservations do not carry the day, Mr. Speaker, that should not discourage any Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. We receive the memorandum, we wait. If we are convinced that the nominee is not suitable, that will carry the day. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to also make a comment that we need to relook at the provisions of the Public Appointment Parliamentary Approval Act, a law that was introduced before this House by my good friend Senator Mungatana, I believe in 2011, soon after the passage of the 2010 Constitution. It has served us well, especially where, Mr. Speaker, this House may unnecessarily delay the approval of a nominee. But on the other hand, also, Mr. Speaker, it puts a lot of pressure on Parliament, Mr. Speaker, to rush the vetting or confirmation process of nominees. I sympathize with our colleagues in the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, who have been faced with a task of undertaking a confirmation of 22 cabinet secretaries together with an Attorney General in a record period of 14 days. Mr. Speaker, that period, I think, needed to be reviewed, Mr. Speaker. Even recruitment of IEBC commissioners, Mr. Speaker, the recruitment panel is given 90 days, Mr. Speaker, because you need to get information from some of Chapter 6 commissions like EACC. You need to get information from the DPP, from the DCI, Mr. Speaker. I think we need to amend this piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, and give Parliament at least a period of 90 days, Mr. Speaker. If we retain 14 days, it will be reduced to a matter of National Assembly or the Senate just ticking boxes. And Mr. Speaker, we know how houses, houses that do confirmations, how detailed they are. You know, if you go to the US, Mr. Speaker, out of about 118 nominees to the Supreme Court, the Senate of United States of America, Mr. Speaker, has rejected 37 nominees because they are so detailed, Mr. Speaker. They look at not just the integrity of the candidate, but even your conduct. You remember there is a judge who was rejected on account of an article he wrote in 1964 opposing the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that was extending liberties to black Americans. And because of that article, Mr. Speaker, he was rejected. I know for a fact that those who have been nominated to serve as cabinet secretaries in the US, about 8 have faced rejection, Mr. Speaker, and 9, the various presidents have been forced to withdraw the nomination. I remember the case of Senator John Tower of Texas, Mr. Speaker, who had been nominated by President Bush. But when it came to the public that he was a heavy drunkard, Mr. Speaker, the president was forced to withdraw the nomination, Mr. Speaker. I remember the case of Zubaid, nominated by Bill Clinton in 1993, Mr. Speaker. And when information came to the floor of the Senate House that she had employed an illegal immigrant who had no papers, and that she had evaded paying statutory deductions to the government because she didn't want that information to go to the public. Our nomination was rejected, Mr. Speaker, by the Senate. So that is how high houses that do confirmations have put the bar, Mr. Speaker. I remember that Andrew Johnson, who was president in 1800, Mr. Speaker, he faced an impeachment before the Senate, and they asked his Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, to resign and defend him during the impeachment. The Attorney General then, Andrew Stanbury, Mr. Speaker, he resigned, he defended President Johnson ably. Once Johnson went through the impeachment process in the Senate, he reappointed Henry to take his position back as Attorney General. But the Senate said, we can't play ping-pong games. If you want to resign and go to private practice, resign, go and do private practice. And his nomination was rejected on the basis that he did not show commitment to serving in that office. So this process, Mr. Speaker, is so critical, and it is important that we as a House raise the bar. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we abuse this power of vetting and confirming nominees, next time you hear there is a constitutional review process, the way I had a proposal that Kenya should have a convention to revoke the 2010 Constitution, this power, Mr. Speaker, can easily be taken away from us. So we need to do the right thing, make sure that we build public confidence on the process, make sure that the process is meaningful, Mr. Speaker, so that we retain this power as a House, because it's very, very important, Mr. Speaker. It is one of the best concepts of a country that has adopted a limited government, Mr. Speaker, because it means the executive can propose a nominee, but if that nominee does not meet the bill, it will be, that nominee can be rejected, Mr. Speaker. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I don't think it serves this House and the country well for us to continue doing joint vetting by members of National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, health is a devolved function, Mr. Speaker. We should look at the process of vetting, Mr. Speaker, so that on positions like this one of the Director General for Health, Mr. Speaker, the vetting should be undertaken by the Senate. There are so many offices, Mr. Speaker, including the office of Cabinet Secretary, where the vetting is undertaken by the National Assembly without any reference to this House, Mr. Speaker. So we need to, as a House, revisit this process, Mr. Speaker, so that we demarcate roles for the two Houses. Mr. Speaker, I was very impressed when I listened to this nominee. He's a person who has vast experience on health matters. He's a trained medic. Mr. Speaker, graduated from University of Nairobi. It's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that we have subjected this Kenyan to be in an acting position for 5 years, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask the executive, Mr. Speaker, not to subject professionals to the anxiety of being in an acting position, Mr. Speaker, for more than 5 years. In fact, it is bad practice, human resource. It's a bad human resource practice, Mr. Speaker, to keep somebody in an acting capacity for 5 years. I hope this is the last we are seeing of a case like this, Mr. Speaker, where we deny a very qualified Kenyans a chance of serving in full capacity in a position where he is well qualified. So as he takes over, Mr. Speaker, we hope that he is going to ensure that Kenyans get access to very quality healthcare services, Mr. Speaker, from our hospitals, Mr. Speaker. We have, though this is not directly under his docket, but he should be able to liaise with NHIF, Mr. Speaker, so that the implementation of SHIF that is meant to benefit our people at the counties can be realized, Mr. Speaker. We went through the documentations, and I don't want to belabor this point, Mr. Speaker. I want to assure the country that this is a man of integrity, Mr. Speaker. The Office of Director of Public Prosecution confirmed to the committee, Mr. Speaker, that there are no pending prosecutions against this Kenyan. Ethics and Corruption Commission, Mr. Speaker, confirmed that there are no investigations that are ongoing against this particular nominee. Mr. Speaker, it is important for all Kenyans to pay their taxes, Mr. Speaker. The Constitution is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that if you are not a patriotic Kenyan who pays taxes, then you should not be given a chance to serve the country. Kenya Revenue Authority, Mr. Speaker, confirmed to us that a moth is up to date on his tax obligations. Mr. Speaker, there are people who went to school. They were assisted by the government through help. Their fees were paid by the government. But, Mr. Speaker, they have never paid back that loan to assist other Kenyans. And we were very keen as a committee, Mr. Speaker, to confirm whether a moth who was assisted by the government, was given loan through help, went to University of Nairobi. We were very keen to confirm whether he had cleared his loan, and I want to assure the House, Mr. Speaker, that his record is clear. He produced a certificate from help, and he confirmed that his loan is not in arrears. He does not have any cases pending with DCI, and is a very impartial Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. He doesn't belong to any political party. He's a dedicated Kenyan who wants to serve, whether you belong to Azimio, whether you belong to UDA. Him is a technocrat who wants to serve Kenyans without any discrimination. So I'm assuring honorable members that this nominee is not a member of any political party. In terms of his financial probity and integrity, Mr. Speaker, you can confirm a nominee, Mr. Speaker, who brings you baggage, who has a lot of debts, who is going to join the public service to look for money to clear his many debts out there, Mr. Speaker. It's important, Mr. Speaker, as a House, when we are approving a nominee, you also look at his finances, Mr. Speaker. Are you bringing somebody on board, Mr. Speaker, who is coming with baggage? But I'm happy to report to the House, Mr. Speaker, that on the case of a moth, he produced a certificate from Credit Reference Bureau, confirmed that his debts are well managed, Mr. Speaker. He has a loan, Mr. Speaker, but that is taken care of. Like any Kenyan, you need to borrow to advance yourself, but he doesn't have any loan defaults. So he's a guy we can hold in high esteem, and I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that this Kenyan will serve us well, and I have no hesitation in seconding his nomination to go and serve us in the as a Director General for Health. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I hope as the National Assembly concludes its vetting Mr. Speaker, they will abide by the provisions of Article 130 of the Constitution, so that we have ethnic and regional diversity. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are very litigious. In the history of this country, for the first time, Mr. Speaker, we have seen situations where the courts have nullified 2 finance acts, Mr. Speaker. So we need to be careful as we undertake our vetting or confirmation of our CSS, Mr. Speaker. We need to ensure that we take care of regional and ethnic diversity, Mr. Speaker. And I hope His Excellency the President will very soon address the issue of imbalances on permanent principal secretaries. So, Speaker, people like Pokomos, where Mkatana comes from, they don't have a permanent secretary, they don't have a cabinet secretary. Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, where I come from, we don't have a principal secretary, we don't have a cabinet secretary. You go to Kuria, they have 2 constituencies, Mr. Speaker. There is no principal secretary, no cabinet secretary. The same with the Taitas, Mr. Speaker. We need to build a Kenya where all of us have a sense of belonging, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't mean, Mr. Speaker, that if you come from a small county like Nyamira, where you have 4 constituencies, that you cannot rise to be a cabinet secretary or a principal secretary, Mr. Speaker. One of the most successful cabinet secretaries, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, hailed from Nyamira, Mr. Speaker. So we need, Mr. Speaker, to see the face of Kenya in our executive, Mr. Speaker. So this idea of a broad-based government, Mr. Speaker, should extend to principal secretaries, Mr. Speaker. Those who have been lucky to get cabinet secretaries should not again benefit from the position of principal secretaries, Mr. Speaker. If Kisii County, for example, has gotten the position of cabinet secretary, let Nyamira benefit with a position of principal secretary. This cake belongs to all of us. We can share it, and all of us can feel happy and appreciate the beauty of being a Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. With those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I second this report. Thank you.
Now, honorable members, I rise to propose the question that the Senate adopts the joint report of the Standing Committee on Health of the Senate and the Departmental Committee of Health of the National Assembly on the approval of a nominee for appointment as Director General for Health, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 1st of August 2024, and further that, pursuant to Section 16(2) of Health Act Cap 241 and Section 8, subsection 2 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, approves. Majority Leader and Majority Whip, you may take your seats. And pursuant to Section 8(2) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, approves the nomination of Dr. Patrick Omwanda Amof, EBS, for appointment as the Director General for Health. Now, honorable members, I will allow members to contribute if they have any comments on the motion that we have just proposed for debate, and I've seen this interest from among the members. I'll allow Senator Mungatana Danson Buya to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to, on the onset, congratulate the Committee for Health in Senate for the good work they have done. Mr. Speaker, I have a special respect for members of the legal profession and health profession, medical doctors, and other professions who, from the very early stage, make a decision that they will stick with public service and they grow in public service all the way to high positions. Mr. Speaker, some of us had those kind of opportunities when we were younger, but we made decision to go into private practice. And Mr. Speaker, I look at a lot of successful medical doctors who went to private practice and made a lot of money. But I also juxtapose that against Dr. Patrick Amoth, who started as a medical intern, Mr. Speaker, became a superintendent, became in charge of Kiambu District Hospital. He rose all the way, Mr. Speaker, at the national level to head the Public Health Directorate, where he was in charge of the strategy, public health strategy that was supposed to provide good health services to all the 47 counties in Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, we are talking about a dedicated public servant whom we should support, and we should have supported much earlier. Mr. Speaker, how can we keep a public servant so dedicated from the days of his youth to this time at an acting position for 4 years, since 2019 up to today? Mr. Speaker, I think we have wronged this dedicated public servant. And I pray that that should not be repeated. Mr. Speaker, when he succeeded John Masasabi, the last substantive director general, he stayed in that position for 4 years. He kept on doing what he should be doing now, substantively. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to speak to this issue of acting position. I think the government needs to up its game, both at the national and at county level. When someone is in an acting capacity, Mr. Speaker, they don't fully exercise their authority. They are susceptible to cartels. They are susceptible to manipulation, even susceptible to people who tell them to do the wrong things because they are acting. They are not quite sure whether they will be confirmed or not confirmed. And Mr. Speaker, I want to cascade it to realities as senators. We know that many governors are very, very good at putting people, particularly chief officers, in an acting capacity so that they are able to tell them do this and do the other. And those people do not have security in their jobs, and they are hoping that they will be the ones to be confirmed. And Mr. Speaker, we must bring a law that will stop any governor or any officer in public sector, both at the national and at the local government level, at the county government level, from making public servants stay in an acting capacity for too long, Mr. Speaker, so that these public servants can be able to deal with their offices substantively. Mr. Speaker, I am going to focus on some of the duties that this Director General for Health needs to look at. If you look at the duties that he's supposed to undertake, and I hope he's listening to me, don't be a failure in this ministry and hide behind the PS and hide behind the Cabinet Secretary. We have had a situation here in Kenya where a whole Inspector General of Police, an IG, which to me, the Director for Health, Public Health is like an IG in the ministry, the equivalent, who kept quiet when the situation in Kenya was deteriorating, security situation. We never saw him on television. We never saw him talking to people, and the country was going south. Mr. Speaker, we want to see a strong Director General. A Director General who will not be stationed in Nairobi, moving around in the shadow of the Cabinet Secretary. You are supposed to be an advisor to the Cabinet Secretary, yes, an advisor to the government. But look, amongst your duties, you are supposed to also be an advisor to all county governments and the national government. So you should not be staying in Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, for you to advise the Cabinet Secretary and to advise the government properly on matters health, you should be out there listening and hearing and finding out what is happening on the ground. Mr. Speaker, the Director General for Health during the COVID time in the US, some doctor called Fanucci or something, if I remember well, he was always on TV, Mr. Speaker, always explaining things. He would go to Congress and explain public health policies. He would go and explain to people whatever the national government is thinking. He would try to create measures that would try to align even state health policies with what the national government was doing. He was present. Of course, later on, he has been questioned on some of the measures that he had recommended to the public in the US, but he was there at the time that he was required. We expect the public, the Director General, to be present to the public. Mr. Speaker, like right now, we have been hearing about a disease called Mpox. We have been hearing that it has crossed over the border into Kenya. We have been hearing and even seeing pictures circulating in social media that the first case has been spotted. And Mr. Speaker, we see pictures of horrible skin infection, and we are being told through social media that that is Mpox. And yet, the Ministry of Health, we have not had anything. Even him as an acting Director General, Dr. Patrick Amoth, in this one, you have not been heard at all. Don't be an absentee landlord. Come out and speak to Kenyans. This is what you are employed to do. Don't sit and hide there. One of the responsibilities for you as you are taking over this position is for you to come and tell Kenyans about infectious diseases. If you look at what you are supposed to do, infectious diseases in Kenya, and telling people how we can prevent infectious diseases coming from other countries into our nation. Now we're being told about this Mpox. Now you have left me, Senator Mungatana, my children, my constituents, my voters, and all my associates at the mercy of social media. Nobody is speaking about this thing. And you are there, even if you are in an acting capacity. Listen to me. Get out of the shadows of cabinet secretaries, the shadows of politicians. Come out and do your duty. Let us know we have a Director General for Health, so that we are able to hear and to know where you stand officially, technically where you stand on issues. If this is fake news, then let me hear from my Director General for Health that there is no Mpox, that this thing is not there. But if it is there, let me hear what I'm supposed to tell our people. What are the preventive measures I'm supposed to do? We want the culture of top public servants who speak on technical issues to be established, that when you come to speak, you speak so that we can believe you. Don't hide. Don't hide. Don't hide behind ministers. Don't hide behind PSs. Come out and speak on issues. Mr. Speaker, on this score, I must say, I am disappointed because the person who is acting now has not come to speak on this very crucial issue. Mr. Speaker, during the flooding in Tana River County and other counties that were affected by flooding, it is the time that we needed to see Director General for Health, even though you are in an acting capacity, coming out to talk to people, telling us, you know, now we have this risk of this kind of diseases. Let Kenyans look at you to be the doctor you are. It should not be PSs and CSs alone speaking on policy, and they never trained in that area. When there is an outbreak of dengue fever, when there is an outbreak of malaria or what, let us see you taking the microphone and speaking to us. This is what we want to see, because this is your responsibility. Kenyans want an authority. And you know, one of the duties you have is the internship program. It's supposed to be fully under the Director for Health, the Director General for Health. We have had complaints about how people are posted, how people are being paid, how all these things. It is in your docket to come and tell us as Kenyans, what do we do with our children who have qualified? What are we supposed to do with them? And they are supposed to do that internship for them to become licensed to practice. So, Mr. Speaker, what I'm trying to say is, Dr. Patrick Amoth, it is not enough that you have all these nice qualifications, which we thank you for. It is not enough that you have all this experience, which we are grateful for, as we confirm you into this position. The people of Tana River, they don't know you, because you never come out to talk about anything. So just get out. Stop being this doctor thing of, oh, me, I'm a scientist and I will hide, oh, my work will speak for myself. Be like Dr. Halwale. Make noise until everybody listens and hears what you are saying. Because we need public servants to speak on technical issues. Mr. Speaker, I will belabor that point. We need public servants to speak on technical issues so that everybody does his work. As a senator, I'm supposed to do my work here in this house and out there. You are supposed to do your work where you are. It is very wrong, Mr. Speaker, for us to pay these people and to give them positions, and they are not doing what they are supposed to do. I was not part of that. I'm not in that health committee. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not enough to just say, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I didn't do that. You need to say what you're doing so that we as Kenyans can have full confidence in you as a new person who is taking that position. And, Mr. Speaker, I need to say it here that one of the senators here who was speaking said, this man does not belong to this political party or other what, so he will give fair opportunity or service to every Kenyan. I think that's the wrong way to approach these matters. When you are being asked to take up public positions, we are not asking you to forfeit your Christian beliefs or Hindu beliefs or heathen beliefs, whatever it is. We are not asking you to do that. We are also not asking you to stop saying you belong to UDA or you belong to whatever other political party. Your belonging or not belonging is not the issue. The issue is, are you capable of doing the work that is before you? And, Mr. Speaker, we need to accept that people can have different opinions, but when it comes to work, people must be able to execute the duties which we have selected them or elected them to do. And very quickly, I want to mention, Mr. Speaker, that a lot of controversy is coming around the nomination process and the vetting process and my colleagues have mentioned about it. I hope the other motion will come, but just quickly to mention, Mr. Speaker, there was a cabinet secretary for transportation in Obama's administration, first administration. He was called Ray LaHood. And Ray LaHood resigned at some point from Obama's administration because he said he wanted to pursue more lucrative opportunities outside government. So we need to have honest people, people who will say, up to here, now I've got children going to university, I need to earn more money, and I can't do this job, I don't want to do this job, I want to go and look for money outside. Let us have that kind of thing, honesty of that level. Mr. Speaker, also, that man was a Republican, and Obama was a president who was a Democrat. He was a cabinet nominee in a Democratic president, but he was a Republican. But that didn't mean that the Republicans all of a sudden and the Democrats had merged and they were forming government. Kenyans must start accepting that if we took the US system, all these nominees that are coming, they are coming as individuals. We are not merging political parties. In fact, it would be very untidy to have that kind of a situation. Many secretaries of states in the US, and it's the system we are copying here, many of them, Mr. Speaker, they have served in different administrations and with different presidents, and they belong to different political parties. And it did not matter, because, Mr. Speaker, when the president is picking his judges, when the president is picking his military defense council, when the president is picking his cabinet, Mr. Speaker, he is acting as the head of state. He's acting like the person who is supposed to be in charge of this country everywhere. And when we are appointing judges or chief of defense forces, we don't ask which political party you belong to. The cabinet now in Kenya, people must start accepting the cabinet is just like the military council. It's just like the commissions here that we are appointing here. We don't ask people which political parties they belong to. We must start accepting that people from different political persuasions will serve in the cabinet, because in Kenya, that is how it is. So, Mr. Speaker, my prayer is that as you go into this job, Dr. Patrick Amoth, may you do it as a Kenyan, and may you come out full force to be heard. May the people of Tana River also know you. And I am also booking you on the floor of this Senate to come and visit, so that you see what is happening as you advise the Cabinet Secretary for Health and the national government. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Mungatana, for your contribution. Honorable members, we don't seem to have members interested in contributing, and I will call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the mover to respond. Allow me to thank colleagues for their contributions. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to congratulate Senator Patrick Amoth for this appointment, and allow me to congratulate Dr. Patrick Amoth for this appointment. I also wish to congratulate the committees of the two houses for making the best pick that they could have made. And with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, Oh, you want me to continue? Okay, fine. I thought I thought you wanted us to vote. So we want to vote. Mr. Speaker, before I conclude my response, I have received a gracious request from my daughter here by my own brother called Karen. I'll give her 2 minutes to make...
Senator Boni, Senator Boni, remember earlier on I had indicated that there was no one interested, but I assume that courtesy of your interest on this matter, probably Senator Nyamu has equally been inspired.
She was threatening to impeach me as...
Very well. You will share your time to reply.
Yes.
So that Senator Nyamu can just speak to the report and allows or rather permit you to conclude your reply to this motion.
Yes. So I give you 2 minutes before I respond, before we vote.
Senator Nyamu, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the issue of public health is one of interest, and particularly even in Nairobi County. Mr. Speaker, I rise to contribute to this motion on the confirmation of the nominee for for the Director General for Public Health, Dr. Patrick Omwanda Amoth. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Amoth has a very impressive background in a very impressive education background in medicine and public health. He has also demonstrated that he has the knowledge and the experience, having acted for 4 years in the same position, Mr. Speaker. And he has also contributed, he has had major contributions to the public health sector in the country. He has contributed to the strategies and the existing health policies over time. He has also demonstrated leadership in medical crisis during, for example, the medical pandemic of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, he has also gotten the endorsement of both health committees in both houses, confirming his suitability for the position, Mr. Speaker. And what does the future of medicine and of the public health hold under Dr. Omoth, Mr. Speaker? During his interview, I saw him commit to innovation and improving the sector, which is very important because the health sector is changing rapidly every other day internationally, and we will need someone who is progressive to adopt with the innovation and all that, Mr. Speaker. He has also committed to address the challenges that we face today, the access to health by the public, the education of health, Mr. Speaker, and also the challenge of the availability of the health services, Mr. Speaker. And with those few remarks, because of time, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion. Amen. Thank you.
Senator Boni, your time now is available to close on your reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was just congratulating my colleague in the profession, and I'm glad that a man who has been forced to act for 5 years is finally getting the job. I believe, had he not been acting, the crisis that the country went through in terms of the strike by medical workers, maybe it would have been averted or solved faster. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Amoth is not only a medical specialist, but he has also undergone training in Israel on management of health management systems. This kind of training is just what we need if we are going to build a proper policy that is currently lacking in the devolved structure of managing health, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time, may I use this last minute to request the chair that I reply and I beg to request that the question be put to another date under the standing order number 66.3. Thank you. 66.3. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Boni. And pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 66.3, putting of the question as regards this particular motion is deferred to the next sitting of this House. And now, honorable members, let's rise. Honorable senators, it's now 6:30 p.m. Time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 7th of August 2024 at 9:30 a.m.
Targets. So from this, Mr. Speaker, I would urge the county governments to come up with clear policies where they'll be able to raise money by themselves, to embrace technology and have better systems that will assist them in collecting revenue. Mr. Speaker, I'm told of a story by my late father, or rather I was told a story by my late father, whereby the Nairobi County used to loan, in the 60s, used to loan other governments, foreign governments, money because of the efficiency of how they used to collect money. One of the problems that faces our county government, Mr. Speaker, is they do not know where their tax collectors are, or people who are supposed to pay taxes. For example, Mr. Speaker, I have brought up a bill that was approved by the Budget Committee to have an address system in the country, whereby the county government would know where all the taxpayers are as per using an address system to identify all the necessary people who are supposed to pay tax. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill so that we're able to address, mitigate this issue, whereby, because now that the government does not have enough money, also county governments will also have to reduce their allocation, or their allocation will be reduced, so that we'll have an equitable solution to our problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And thank you very much for using fewer minutes. I want to ask future speakers to do the same, because it has also, most of the things have been ventilated. Let's have the Honorable Esther Pasari speak on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the revision of division of revenue sharing. Mr. Speaker, I commend the Committee of Budget for doing all the work that they've done. And, you know, we've all been mentioning, we've had some unprecedented historical issues that have happened in our country with the Gen Z protests. And, you know, it's brought us to this point where we have to come back and look at our revenue based on the fact that we will not be having the Finance Bill 2024. But I want to take this opportunity to mention a few of the people that lost their lives during these protests. There was Rex Masai, Evans Kiratu, Eric Shieni, David Chege, Bisley Kamau, Ibrahim Kamau, Kennedy Onyango, Abdi Kadir, Charles Ngere, Ikebath Mukei. These are just 10 names of the people that lost their lives. Lest we forget that the reason that we are talking about this today is because the country reached a point where our children rose up and said, enough is enough. And why did they say enough is enough? It's because they can see that the country was not going in the right direction. We, as representatives of the people, failed to actually do the job that we were elected to do. all three arms of government failed the people of Kenya. And because we failed the people of Kenya, we're here discussing the budget. Now, the budget that we have to ask ourselves some really hard questions. Questions because I can see, I recently saw the strike notices coming out left, right, and center. Everybody wants collective bargaining agreements that were agreed, honored. People want jobs that were promised, people hired. We have shortages of teachers, we have shortages of medics, we have people who are past retirement age still in government. We have to really start cleaning up. And cleaning up, if we can't do it ourselves, what we had with the Gen Z revolution or protest recently was like a tremor. The earthquake is what we should avoid. And we can avoid it if we actually listen and act on everything that they're saying. Because you know what? These are not strangers coming to tell us how to run our country. These are not strangers telling us that there's a lot of waste. These are not strangers telling us there's a lot of theft and a lot of corruption. These are our children. These are Kenyans. These are people that the Constitution swore to protect. But then when I come to think about it, I also feel sometimes that maybe we need to really sit down and revisit this Constitution. You know, do we really need 47 counties? Did we actually start this, this exorbitant expenditure when we passed our Constitution, where we decided to have so many counties? I mean, I was trying to draw a parallel with California. California is got the population of Kenya and has 150 elected representatives versus our 2,000. California has a GDP of probably the entire continent of Africa. And here in Kenya, we, right now, when we think about it, we are, I think, overrepresented. California has CEOs running the various state boroughs that they have within their state. So I think we really need to look at, and we need to do it quickly. We need to look at, one, are our laws adequate when it comes to fighting corruption? Because the former president said we're losing 2 billion a day, which comes to about 700 billion. We definitely need money to be able to get this country right. And if we actually deal with corruption, we should be able to do this. But are we putting money into dealing with corruption? Are we putting the legislation and the structures in place to deal with corruption? Because if we are not, then we're going to have a problem. I saw some videos running around on social media after we did the vetting, and so many people questioning the wealth of many of the people that we're vetting. I too wonder, how do people make that kind of money? Because I've had businesses that have collapsed, businesses that have done well, and I don't have that kind of wealth. And I don't want that kind of wealth. Because at the end of the day, it's ridiculous for one person to be worth so much, and the only job that they've ever had is a public servant. You know, I think it's like egg on the face of the people that have elected us to do the work. When we look at the basic the sharing of the monies that we give to the counties, we have the basic share of 20%, population 18%, health at 17%, poverty levels at 14%, agriculture at 10%, roads at 8%, lands at 8%, and urban at 5%. I have a feeling that when we come up with 7.8 in equalization, are we asking ourselves whether the money we've already given them has actually had an impact on poverty alleviation? Devolution was supposed to sort that. Some of the counties that are so poor that children are still studying under the trees have been given billions of shillings since we started with devolution. So we obviously have a problem, and yet the governors that have left those counties are billionaires today, shamefully. So I feel that while we're looking at the revenue sharing, while we're looking at the monies at the various, to all the government and the three arms of government, I think the most important thing that we have to look at is pending bills. I mean, we should have, as a government and counties, You know, we've actually impoverished a lot of Kenyans. We've taken services from Kenyans and we've not paid them. And we're not even providing. We keep having committee after committee. And these are Kenyans who've actually employed people, borrowed money from banks that have actually now, some of them are committing suicide, some of them are actually having serious mental health issues. We have to be a country that cares. And for us to be a country that cares, we actually have to have a holistic approach. So I really pray and hope that somehow the three arms of government will sit down together and actually have a conversation about where we went wrong, what are we doing right, and then directing us to ensure that we do right. I know we want to say that we're independent, right? But we're all dependent on each other. And that interdependence means we have to have a conversation. And that conversation is, are we going to allow the tremors that we felt with the Gen Z protest become an earthquake that engulfs all of us? Or are we going to deal with it that we never have a tremor again because we did the right thing? History will judge us. The 2024 finance bill is a gap and a void in our history. But there are deaths. There are people that died. There are businesses that were looted. There are people that have suffered irreparable damage. Loss of life can never be replaced. If this country doesn't change, then it was in vain. So we have to make sure that history does not judge us harshly. The 13th Parliament has got a big job to do, and it's not just about bringing budgets and bringing appropriation bills and division of revenue bills. It's about getting it right. It's about listening and acting on everything that the Gen Zs have put on the table. Every single day, I see them doing a better job than EACC in telling us how the counties are actually stealing money. They're going to continue doing that on a daily basis. They're going to expose everything. No one is actually going to do anything anymore in this country that will not be exposed. So let's change our direction. Let's change the direction to the dreams of our forefathers when they coined the national anthem, when they actually fought for our independence. Because what we have done is we have taken that independence and thrown this country to the dogs. Let us bring Kenya back its lost glory. And that requires us being serious. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
The Honorable Naomi Wako.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important debate as I congratulate the committee for the great work they have done. Some few weeks or months ago, we passed our finance bill, after which many things have happened and Kenya has gone through things as a result of rejection of that finance bill. Our dream was the finance bill will go through and that this government will be able to achieve all its goals and also empower the people in different ways. Our dream was to bring that transformative agenda and effectively work on it. Unfortunately, it did not work. And John Stott in one of his books said that the world is suffering because we lack a listening ear. And many honorable members have said that we have failed in a way, but the truth of the matter is, yes, that has come, and what the country has gone through has served as a wake-up call. And that is why today we are here to support this division of revenue amendment bill that will guide us on how we'll be sharing the revenue. Honorable Speaker, just to touch on devolution, with the coming of devolution, many of marginalized areas, many counties have seen the light of the day, have benefited, and devolution in different ways have empowered people, have brought development, and people have experienced some growth. Unfortunately, we also have some negative happenings as a result of devolution, But if you look at the positive, the growth that many counties or many areas have gone through is from the time that we have put into consideration devolution. If we want to use our resources effectively and efficiently, we must be good stewards. Honorable Speaker, what happened into our country, what happened to us, was not good. And internationally, it has brought us down. It has had some negative impact. And as a result of that, we are now experiencing budget cut that affects every area. And as we do that, we need to just make sure that every county needs to be more responsible, more accountable. The CEOs, the governors in place, we have a lot of gaps. We have a lot of corruption going on. And that is why we need to do proper audit so that the issue of ghost workers, we will get rid of that. The issue of corruption, the issue of nepotism, and other things that are highly practiced in all parts of this country will be reduced so that we make good use of the resources that God has given us. Honorable Speaker, in the budget that we passed, promotion of local manufacturers, we wanted to increase our own wealth. We wanted to increase export, and then reduce import so that we can create our own wealth. But unfortunately, that has not happened. And that is why today I support this bill so that we encourage ourselves to live within our means and use the resources. I want to congratulate the members of Parliament for denying ourselves. I was in 12th Parliament. We had more opportunities. We traveled a lot. We had good things. But today, it is totally different. With all that, we need to know the negative impact of the finance bill that we did not pass. That means minimal development. That means employment will be reduced. That means the monies that goes into the ministries will be reduced. And we need to just tighten our belts because it will be tough and rough. But we know that one day we will be out of this. I want to reduce and give maybe remaining time to others, but I stand to support. When the going gets tough, only the tough can get going. So let us be positive and make sure that we use our resources wisely. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Kambalu, Honorable.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the report. First, I want to say I want to support the report on the consideration of the Division of the Revenue Amendment Bill 2024 and thank the chairperson of the committee on having a listening ear. Mr. Speaker, we know why we are here, and I want to borrow the foreword of the chairperson. That is because of the failure to enact of the Finance Bill 2024 into law, the Appropriation Act 2024, the Treasury was directed to prepare a revised budget for the financial year 2024-2025, of course, to reduce the expenditure by the amount of revenue that is expected to be generated by the Finance Bill 2024. Mr. Speaker, the import of the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the chair who has put with his team, who has put the report very well. The import of the purpose of the bill, Mr. Speaker, is to amend the Revenue Act 2024 to provide for the equitable sharing of the revenue raised nationally between the national and the county governments. And of course, taking into consideration the downward revision of the projected online revenue collection. The bill is seeking to amend Section 5 of the Act, and of course, deleting and replacing of the Schedule number 5 of 2024 as contained in the Act. Mr. Speaker, with this, the committee has gone ahead to propose the changes, the amendments, as we said, and the rationale, especially Section 5.1,